The Book of the Damned, by Charles Hoyfort, Chapter 28d. In the Illustrated London News, the occurrence is given a great deal of space. In the issue of February 24, 1855, a sketch is given of the prints. I call them cones and incomplete basins. Except that they are a little longish, they look like prints of hoofs of horses, or, rather, of colts. But they are in a single line. It is said that the marks from which the sketch was made were 8 inches apart, and that this spacing was regular and invariable in every parish. Also other towns besides those named in the Times are mentioned. The writer, who had spent a winter in Canada and was familiar with tracks in snow, says that he had never seen a more clearly defined track. Also he brings out the point that was so persistently disregarded by Professor Owen and the other correlators, that no known animal walks in a line of single footsteps, not even man. With these wider inclusions, this writer concludes with us that the marks were not footprints. It may be that his following observation hits upon the crux of the whole occurrence. That whatever it may have been that had made the marks, it had removed, rather than pressed, the snow. According to his observations, the snow looked as if branded with a hot iron. Illustrated London News, March 3, 1855, page 214. Professor Owen, to whom a friend had sent drawings of the prints, writes that there were claw marks. He says that the track was made by a badger. 6 other witnesses sent letters to this number of the News. One mentioned, but not published, is a notion of a strayed swan. Always this homogeneous, seeing, a badger, a swan, a track. I should have listed the other towns as well as those mentioned in the Times. The letter from Mr. Musgrave is published. He, too, sends a sketch of the prints. It, too, shows a single line. There are 4 prints, of which the third is a little out of line. There is no sign of a claw mark. The prints look like prints of long hoofs of a very young colt, but they are not so definitely outlined as in the sketch of February 24th, as if drawn after disturbance by wind, or after thawing had set in. Measurements at places 1.5 miles apart gave the same spacing, exactly 8.5 inches apart. We now have a little study in the psychology and genesis of an attempted correlation. Mr. Musgrave says, I found a very apt opportunity to mention the name kangaroo in allusion to the report then current. He says that he had no faith in the kangaroo story himself, but was glad that a kangaroo was in the wind, because it opposed a dangerous, degrading, and false impression that it was the devil. Mine was a word in season and did good. Whether it's Jesuitical or not, and no matter what it is or isn't, that is our own acceptance. That, though we've often been carried away from this attitude controversially, that is our acceptance as to every correlate of the past that has been considered in this book, relatively to the dominant of its era. Another correspondent writes that, though the prints in all cases resembled hoof marks, there were indistinct traces of claws, that an otter had made the marks. After that many other witnesses wrote to the News. The correspondence was so great that, in the issue of March 10th, only a selection could be given. There's a jumping rat solution and a hopping toad inspiration, and then someone came out strong with an idea of a hare that had galloped with pairs of feet held close together, so as to make impressions in the single line.